For more than a century, two nations, England and France, were locked in one of the longest and most brutal conflicts in human history. A war that began with a claim to a throne, but grew into a struggle for identity, power, and survival. It was a war that forged empires, destroyed dynasties, and changed Europe forever. This is the story of the 100 Years' War, a conflict that, despite its name, raged on for 116 years. The seeds of the war were planted long before the first battle. In 1066, William the Conqueror, the Duke of Normandy, crossed the English Channel and seized the English crown. From that moment, the kings of England held vast lands in France, a situation destined to create tension. Over the next 2 centuries, England and France were bound together by blood, marriage, and rivalry. But when the French king, Charles IV, died in 1328 without a male heir, the fragile peace shattered. The English king, Edward III, was Charles's nephew, and by right of his mother, a French princess, he claimed the throne of France. The French nobles, unwilling to accept a foreign ruler, rejected Edward's claim and crowned Philip VI of Valois instead. Insulted and determined to assert his right, Edward declared himself the true king of France. In 1337, war began. The early campaigns were brutal and swift. England, though smaller and poorer, had a powerful navy and a new weapon that would redefine medieval warfare, the longbow. At the Battle of Crécy in 1346, English archers unleashed volleys of arrows that tore through French knights like thunder. Heavily armored cavalry fell before peasant bowmen. It was a shocking reversal of medieval order, where nobility was no longer safe behind its armor. 9 years later, at Poitiers, the French king, John II, was captured by the English Black Prince, Edward's son. France fell into chaos. In 1360, the Treaty of Bretigny forced the French to give up vast territories to England. For a moment, it seemed Edward's dream of ruling both kingdoms might come true. But the war was far from over. France slowly recovered. The peasants, weary of war and taxation, rose up in bloody revolt. And a new generation of French leaders emerged, determined to reclaim their homeland. Then, disaster struck both sides. The Black Death swept across Europe, killing millions and halting armies. For a time, the war went quiet, but the hatred remained. When fighting resumed, fortunes began to turn. France adopted new tactics, using smaller, faster armies and avoiding open battles. But in 1415, an English king, Henry V, reignited the old dream of conquest. He invaded France with a disciplined, professional army and met the French at Agincourt. The field was a muddy trap. Thousands of French knights charged across it, only to be cut down by the English longbows once again. It was another devastating defeat. Henry became a hero in England, and by the Treaty of Troyes, he was recognized as the heir to the French throne. But fate intervened. Henry V died young, and his infant son inherited a divided kingdom. As the English weakened, hope rose in France from an unexpected source. In 1429, a teenage peasant girl named Joan of Arc claimed she was sent by God to save France. With her faith and courage, she inspired a demoralized nation. She led French troops to victory at Orléans, breaking the English siege and turning the tide of the war. Her victories allowed the Dauphin, Charles VII, to be crowned King of France at Reims. But Joan's triumph was short-lived. Captured by the English, she was accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake in 1431, a martyr whose death united France even more deeply against its enemies. In the decades that followed, France regained its strength, its armies modernized, its loyalty strengthened. The English, weakened by internal strife and civil wars at home, could no longer hold their French possessions. By 1453, the war was over. England had lost all its territories in France, except the port of Calais. The 100 Years' War was finally finished, but Europe would never be the same. The age of armored knights and chivalry had ended. Longbows, gunpowder, and national armies had reshaped warfare. And for the first time, people began to think not just of kings, but of nations. England turned inward, soon to face its own civil war, the Wars of the Roses. France emerged united and proud, its monarchy stronger than ever. Out of a century of blood came a new world, one defined by identity, resilience, and the birth of modern Europe. The 100 Years' War was not merely a conflict over a crown, it was the long, painful birth of two nations that would dominate the centuries to come.